G'day and welcome to ReDriven. Now guys, we are working our bums off to make ReDriven an international platform for car fans all around the world to embrace and enjoy. But as you can probably tell from my accent and the locations that we film in, I and ReDriven are Australian. And we have received a whole bunch of requests from viewers all around the world to feature more Aussie content. And we do have some awesome stuff planned for a few select Aussie cars. But for now, we figured, how about we celebrate the absolute best that the Aussie automotive industry has achieved with a ReDriven Top 5. The thing is, see, over the last few decades, we've made a whole bunch of absolutely brilliant cars. So rounding it down to just a top 5 is basically impossible. So therefore, welcome to part 1, because after we reached out to a whole bunch of ReDriven viewers, car fans, motoring journalists, even the dozens of industry experts and mechanics that we speak to every week for our top 5 and review videos, it quickly became apparent that this is going to have to be a multi-part series. So kicking things off for part 1, and in no particular order, it's arguably the final great Aussie car. It's the HSV GTSR W1. This car is quite literally HSV's final contribution to the Holden Commodore, which makes it a Holden very special vehicle. Basically what we have here is a 474 kilowatt, 815 newton meter, 6.2 litre supercharged LS9 V8 bolted into what is ostensibly a race car for the road. We're talking Pirelli P0 Trofeo R tyres, almost the same Super Shock fixed rate dampers as used on V8 supercars. The AP racing brakes are absolutely huge, and they're regarded as some of the world's best. Even the front guards are 12mm wider and made of lightweight polypropylene rather than aluminium. This all results in the W1 holding the crown as the fastest and the most powerful Australian production car ever made. But unlike, say, Porsche, Ferrari and Lamborghini's race cars for the road variants, the W1 isn't some stripped out, uncompromising track day weapon thanks to the Alcantara trimmed interior, typical HSV man-sized sports seats, the thick-rimmed flat-bottom steering wheel, and a full host of tech and infotainment features. Plus, it's still a Commodore, so you get 4 doors and a huge boot. Well, you would if you could actually buy one. $170,000 for a Commodore seemed downright insane to many not understanding just how special the W1 is or its importance in Australia's motoring history. But $170,000 for a W1 these days would be seen as the bargain of the century. These things have skyrocketed in value, confirming its position of becoming a true modern classic. Currently, the W1's for sale, they're asking anywhere from $400,000 to $650,000. When talking about the most expensive examples of the W1, this is an increase in value of more than $450,000 in just 5 years. There aren't too many other investments that can match these sort of returns. This increase in value can also be attributed to the W1's rarity. Only 275 examples were ever made, but even if that's too common for you, just 4 HSV Maloo GTSR W1 utes were hand-built offline by HSV's engineering division for a small group of VIPs. But you're going to need north of $1 million to secure one of these things. Okay, next up, it's a car that's about as opposite to the W1 as you could possibly ever get, both in terms of who made it and what it even is. It's the FPV F6X. Now, if you're a HSV fan, surely your enemy must be FPV, or Ford Performance Vehicles. And if a W1 poster inhabits some real estate on your bedroom, workshop, or office wall, there's a pretty high chance that you feel utter disdain for SUVs, let alone performance variants of these high-riding monstrosities, right? Well, whatever your opinion of performance SUVs may be, there's no denying that the FPV F6X is about as underrated and possibly unique as they come. Back in 2008, FPV put some spark into the pretty mundane Ford territory and gave us the beastly F6X. Cosmetically speaking, it doesn't differ from the standard territory all that much, but under that bonnet duct and alluded to by the F6X badges, it's a totally different story. These things are fitted with the iconic 270 kilowatt, 550 newton meter, 4 litre Barra straight 6 turbo. Now, these engines are highly tunable and therefore are seen as the basis of some truly insane builds, especially in the drag racing scene. There have been examples of these engines in Falcon body shells pumping out north of 1,000 horsepower and achieving sub 10-second quarter mile times with ease, which is a testament to its durability and effectiveness. In fact, there are even a few modified non-FPV territory turbos out there being daily driven with nearly 600 kilowatts at the wheels. That's around 800 horsepower at the wheels in a Ford territory. But even in regards to the F6X, this thing, even in standard trim, is impressively fast. These things weigh more than 2 tons, yet they can get from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in less than 6 seconds. Thanks in part to that Barra turbo being accompanied by not just all-wheel drive, but also reworked suspension and a chunky set of brakes with 6-piston Brembo calipers up front. It all translates to all of this power getting to the road quickly and confidently. One more impressive aspect of this thing is that compared to the equivalent performance-orientated SUVs of the time, such as, say, the supercharged V8 versions of the Range Rover Sport, they cost a fraction of the price. Well, they did when they were new. The F6X retailed at just over $77,000, while the equivalent Range Rover Sport was asking $145,000, making the F6X, at least in terms of performance, an absolute bargain compared to the competition. However, these days, an F6X will be asking around about $50,000 on the used market. That same Range Rover Sport, more like $30,000. Okay, next up, and proving that our top 5 videos are always made up of the culmination of dozens of people's opinions, never just mine, because this next car does nothing for me. I cannot stand them. It's the HSV VL Group A Walking Shore, and it's as ugly as Even though I don't get it, look, I'll admit, the Walking Shore is easily one of the most desirable Holden cars ever made. Only 750 examples were ever produced, and it was built to homologate the Holden VL Commodore Group A race car during a period that produced some legendary cars and names. One such iconic name in the racing scene was Tom Walkinshaw of Walkinshaw Racing, and in collaboration with HSV, they combined to build these VLs with the intent of being road-going equivalents of the cars that were competing in Australian touring car racing, and in fairly dominant fashion. When these things were brand new, they retailed for around about $45,000. However, these days, you're going to need to fork out at least $200,000 to get behind the wheel, with the most recent example being sold for as much as $340,000. Which is pretty insane considering this is a Commodore from the 1980s, albeit a pretty special one with a fair amount of heritage. In terms of performance, the 5-litre V8 pumps out 180 kilowatts and 380 newton meters, sending it from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 6.9 seconds, which may not sound all that impressive in today's terms, as a Hyundai i30N will beat it in power by 26 kilowatts, a Ford Escape SUV tops it in torque by 7 newton meters, and even a Toyota Camry will destroy it in a drag race, but hey, at least it still sounds like this. Although, while it might still sound amazing, that enormous body kit is polarizing in terms of aesthetics. In fact, so much so that it is speculated that some owners actually opted to have the body kit removed before placing their order. Although apparently that sea of plastic and fiberglass is functional, reducing drag by more than 25% compared to the 1987 HDT SS Group A Commodore. Also, you could choose any colour that you wanted when you bought one brand new, as long as that colour was panorama silver. But unfortunately, these days many have been resprayed a different colour, plus there are a fair share of fake replicas running around. Okay, next up, and honestly we did not see this one coming, but it was recommended time and time again, it's the Mitsubishi Ralliart Magna. Now, speaking of stupid-looking body kits covering up a genuinely good product, welcome to what must surely be the wildcard entry for this series. Besides the pretend Evo looks, let's get one of the other downsides out of the way first. Yes, this thing was front-wheel drive only, but nevertheless, the winged Magna will actually get from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour faster than a Falcon XR8 of the same vintage. That's pretty impressive and also pretty embarrassing for the V8 Falcon. But ignoring the controversial aesthetics, these things, they are criminally underrated, and they do represent arguably the most exciting product to come out of Mitsubishi's Australian operations. And the upgrades that feature on the Ralliart Magna are more than just skin deep. Performance upgrades consisted of a retuned ECU, new camshafts, a new exhaust system, all resulting in 180 kilowatts and 333 newton meters. It featured reworked suspension and shocks, better brakes, it featured the same 17-inch Enkei wheels fitted to the Lancer Evo 6. They were wrapped in Pirelli Performance tyres as well, while inside, the front seats featured bigger seat bolsters and a smattering of Ralliart badges and highlights. Unfortunately, it is going to be difficult to find a clean example these days, and especially in a manual, because these things are just rare in general. Not to mention that the rally art Magnas that are out there are usually snatched up pretty quickly by those in the know when they're in good nick. But if you are in the market for one, and you do manage to find a mint example, snap it up quickly, because not only are they surprisingly enjoyable to drive, they're sure to keep increasing in value as well. Now guys, before we get to our final contender, I've got to ask a favor. If you're enjoying this video and you're enjoying ReDriven's content in general, can you please hit the like, subscribe, and bell buttons and share our content as much as you can? Because the more you hit those buttons, the more you share our stuff, the more of this stuff we can make. Okay, wrapping up part 1 of this series, and I think we all knew this beast of a thing was going to make an appearance. It's the 1971 Ford Falcon GTO Phase 3. The GTO's claim to fame has been that it was quite simply the fastest four-door production car in the world at the time. And not only that, they're also extremely rare. Only 300 Phase 3s were ever actually made, and it's speculated that less than half this amount have stood the test of time. This is part of what made the Phase 3 so special. However, the other contributing factor to its legendary stature is the sheer performance that these things had for the time. The Phase 3 is still no slouch even by today's standards, and we're talking about a car that's 50 years old. The 5.7 litre V8 pumped out 280 kilowatts and 513 newton meters, propelling it from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in just 6.4 seconds. That made it quicker than a Porsche 911, Ferrari Dino, and even Lamborghini Miura of the time. Granted, a current Volkswagen Golf GTI will wipe the floor with all of these days, but still, we're talking 50 years ago. That's amazing. This performance was thanks to a host of upgrades that the Phase 3 received over the Phase 2, and these wouldn't just improve performance, but also reliability. However, be prepared to sell off any internal organs if you plan on buying one these days, because unless you're at Warren Buffett levels of financial affluence, you're going to have a tough time securing one for your collection. In very recent history, these things have been swapping hands for some eye-watering figures, most notably in September 2021, where a Phase 3 in yellow glow with a cream beige vinyl roof was sold at auction for 1.3 million Australian dollars. And this is still the highest verified price of any Australian road car that has ever been sold. The only other car that is speculated to have beaten it is, funnily enough, an XA Phase 4, which is rumoured to have sold for 1.75 million Aussie dollars. It's also important to mention that along with its road-going heritage, which the Phase 3 has in spades, the race car versions of these were ballistic for the time. To give you an example, in 1971, a few Phase 3s rocked up to Bathurst to compete. They ended up taking first, second, and third place trophies home, absolutely decimating the competition. And remember, this was at a time where the race cars that you watched on Sunday were near identical machines to the cars that you could go and buy off the showroom floor the following Monday. All of these attributes often see the Phase 3 being referred to as the greatest Australian muscle car of all time, and honestly, it's pretty hard to disagree with that statement. Now guys, as I mentioned, this is purely part 1, but we want to know, what cars do you feel should be included in future installments? Let us know in the comments. Oh, also, can you please remember to hit those like, subscribe, and bell buttons if you enjoyed this video, and share ReDriven's content as much as you can, and go and check us out on the socials as well. See you next week. It's arguably the manufacturer and what the car even is. It's the FPV F6X. I was like, do that again, here we go. Which may not sound all, you. A few Phase 3s rocked up to Bathurst Now guys, as I mentioned, this is part 1 of series. What am I trying to say? Why is my brain dying? It's only 2 takes for polypropylene. Proud of that. Polypropylene. If I ever have a son, I'm going to name him Polypropylene. Polypropylene Morris. Won't get ripped off in school at all with a name like that.